this year of the People and Places Committee. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded, it's being live streamed and it is recorded as well. So, and it will be available later on the council pages. So, starting out, are there any apologies? Councillor Simpson, could I have a mover and a second of apology? Thank you. Councillor Wright, seconded Councillor Tarpany. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. Are there any conflicts of interest? Right, there are none. There is no public forum. Are there any announcements by the Mayor? No. Any announcements by myself, including notification of minor matters not on the agenda? Just a reminder, it is written in the agenda that a meeting may discuss an item that is not on the agenda only if it is a minor matter relating to the general business of the meeting, and the chairperson explains at the beginning of the public part of the meeting that the item will be discussed. However, the meeting may not make a resolution, decision or recommendation about the item except to refer it to a subsequent meeting for further discussion. So are there any minor matters?
Through the Chair, I'd just like to request a brief update on Te Pihinga.
A brief update on Te Pihinga.
It'll be at the end of the meeting.
At the end of the meeting?
I had indicated to...
Oh, right. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. I'm just wondering, is this related to the agenda?
My understanding is it doesn't have to be related to the agenda.
It doesn't have to be an agenda item. It's related to the business,
of the committee.
Okay. The broader business of this committee. Councillor Crown.
Through the Chair, I'd also like to offer an update in regards to the communications and engagement strategy that we have around water at the moment.
The only thing that concerns me about that, Councillor Crown, is that the water asset manager isn't here if there are issues that are being raised of interest to him.
Well, given that we're not actually going to come to any decision or resolution, and that the key member of management in regards to communications and community development are here, working on that, I thought that it would be an appropriate time just to give an update. It's simply information sharing.
The only other concern I have about that is that it is not on the agenda in terms of there might be people who perhaps could have come to this meeting had they known it was going to be discussed.
And that hence why I'm raising it in minor matters, actually not as an agenda item for this. It's simply an update publicly, but you're in the chair.
Okay, we'll go with it.
Thank you.
Right, any announcements by management? No, thank you. Antoinette. Confirmation of minutes. We don't have any minutes. It's the first meeting. So our first item is the Hawke's Bay Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Annual Report 2018-19. And I'd like to ask Ian McDonald, please, to come up to the table and answer any questions or say anything you'd like to about this.
Morning, Your Worship, councillors. Look, I'm not going to go into the report at all. I'll take it as read. But obviously, civil defence is now a shared service across all of the councils. So we think it's important that we report here at least on an annual basis as to what we're doing. And obviously your Mayor is on the joint committee and your Chief Executive is on the coordinating executives group. So that's where the hard work is done, I suppose. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Well, I just had a couple of little ones. I mean, it's a very thorough report and it gives us great confidence that we've got the resilience and capability to deal with emergencies. I should know this, but where is your office?
So we're spread across the region. So most of the staff are at Hastings, at the Emergency Management Centre in Hastings. Okay. And we have some staff here at the Regional Council building. We're just in the process of replacing the emergency management staff member who assists with Napier City Council, and she starts sort of later on in the next couple of months. So Natasha, so she'll be spending some time in Napier City Council. So and we've got people at Wairau and Central Hawke's Bay as well.
Right. Yes, Councillor Brosnan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ian, for the report. I was particularly interested in the tsunami risk reduction program that you report on in there. And I suppose one of my questions in reading that was, do you see the joint group's responsibility as kind of an advisory or an advocacy role in terms of, like, we're going through our district planning process, which has lots of links through to what you're talking about in here?
Yep. So we have a very strong advisory role, an advocacy role really, I think, more than advisory, in terms of working with the local TLAs in terms of their district plans. We've worked with Hastings already, and we've already started work with Napier and Napier City Council officers in terms of the review of your district plan. So definitely.
So you're all over that?
Well, I wouldn't say we're all over it, but definitely are involved with Richard and his team.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, could you please speak into the microphone? It's hard to hear some of you. So thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Ian. But this isn't relative to your report, but it's probably topical, is your civil defence relationship with the DHB and dealing with coronavirus. Can you give us an idea?
I'll give you a very quick overview because obviously it's fairly complicated. So the DHB is the lead agency for any pandemic event in New Zealand, or for the region, and obviously at a national level it's the Ministry of Health. Our role in their plan is to support them in welfare, essentially. So we've been going through a lot of processes obviously over the last few weeks, and we're actually in the middle of a planning cycle at the moment in terms of coming up with our initial action plan should this get any worse. So we're putting in place a whole lot of contingencies, and we're working with the councils in terms of your own contingencies and your business preparedness and all the rest of it, because this could have an impact on the services that you provide, your essential services. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, yeah, and is there anywhere the public can go to keep updated? Do you guys have a website that's available that people can sort of follow?
Yep, sure. So in terms of this event, we're not the lead agency, we're not doing any of the public information. All we're doing is we're just repeating essentially what the Ministry of Health and the DHB are telling us. The best website for members of the public to go to is the Ministry of Health website, and there's a whole lot of advice on there, everything from how to properly wear a mask right through to how it's potentially transmitted and whether you should be travelling and all the rest of it. So the Ministry of Health is the best website. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, could I have a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation that the Napier People and Places Committee receive the Hawke's Bay Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Annual Report 2018? Moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Mawson. Would you like to speak to it at all?
Brilliant.
No? Okay. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. The motion's carried. Thank you very much. I appreciate you have to go, so thank you for your time. The next item on the agenda is the Napier Positive Ageing Strategy, and I'd like to ask Michelle Grigg and Natasha Necki to come up and talk to it, answer questions, or whatever. So, do you want to speak to it, or would you? Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Great, thanks very much for having me here to speak to the paper. For those of you that don't know, my name's Michelle Grigg and I'm a Senior Policy Advisor in the Community Strategies team and was responsible for coordinating development of the strategy. But first, some acknowledgements. Maxine, Councillor Bogue and Councillor Taylor for being champions during the strategy development time. It's been quite a journey. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the many organisations, individuals and agencies, community groups that we've worked with along the way, and some are here today that sat on our steering group and our reference group. And Councillor Mawson, who is our portfolio holder going forward for positive ageing, so looking forward to working alongside you. So the purpose of the paper today really is to present the final, we hope, proposed version of the strategy. We sent it out for feedback August, September last year, so it was approved by the council at that time to go out for feedback, and we've had some really positive responses to it. So just a bit of background for this work. It began back in 2015, I understand, when the council at that time asked us to develop a strategy. We've spoken with many people along the way in many different settings and have received nothing but enthusiasm for this approach. So we're really excited to be here today presenting the final version. We've also had interest from the Office for Seniors in Wellington in the strategy, and they're waiting with anticipation to see where it goes next, and colleagues in other councils around the country. Becoming an age-friendly city is certainly something that's very much on everyone's radars, and going forward, we're expecting about a third of our population to be over 65 in the next 20 years. So it's going to be a huge change for our city. So a couple of points to note about the strategy. It is a sector-wide strategy, so it's not just about what does council do. That's why it's taken so long to get to this point, that we've been working with many organisations to get them on board with the strategy. And the reality is that council can't affect some things to the extent that we might want to. For example, health services. The DHB is funded to provide health services. We can work alongside to advocate for things, but that's where we've had other agencies come on board saying they'll help lead parts of the strategy. Second point is it focuses on 65 years and over age group, but recognising that we've got a big cohort of people in their 50s coming through. So one thing we did during the development was make sure that we spoke to people in their 50s to find out what their aspirations were for the future. Be fair to say that quite a few were in denial about reaching 65 and over. It was quite an interesting conversation, but we pushed through. And the other thing with the strategy is we intend to review it every 5 years to make sure it's still relevant. Lastly, we've made sure it aligns nicely with the national strategy, which is called Better Later Life. That was released last year. So we've had the opportunity to make sure it lines up with that. And also the World Health Organisation Age-Friendly Cities and Communities model, because the intention is once this is embedded, we could look at becoming, it's not accredited, but a known age-friendly city that would be registered with the WHO. It also lines up with our disability strategy that was adopted last year and our current LTP. So the feedback that we got, very briefly, in September last year, we had 70 responses come in. We're really pleased with that. People have had the opportunity to feedback online and on paper. And that set of feedback was considered by a subgroup of our steering and reference group members. As I said earlier, there was positive support for the vision of the strategy, for the 7 priority areas, and we've made a few edits to the final version we're presenting today, which are shown in red text, so you would have seen those when you read it. And we also got some ideas in the feedback from people about ideas for action, so we've put those to one side and added them to the list that we've been accumulating on the way about, right, next steps, what are we going to do? So this strategy, to emphasise, really does give us the vision and the guidance for where we go with that. We're going to be setting up an advisory group, all going well with adopting the strategy, which will consist of agencies and also community members to say, right, what are the actions we're going to put in place? And as I said before, working with those lead organisations as well as ourselves and other departments and council. So really excited to be here and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
So, Councillor Wright.
Thank you for that. It is very exciting that we now have a strategy. So the implementation plan, which you've just talked about, which will detail some actions that are to be taken, how long do you think it'll be before that is done, and will that be presented back to council?
We can certainly present it to council for information. Depends on how long it takes to set up our advisory group, and then they will be responsible for developing the plan. So council will support that group. It will be independently chaired. I envisage 6 to 12 months to get that all set up, and what we want to do is go through a priority setting exercise, because obviously we've got a list as long as your arm about what we could do under each of those areas, but let's look at what's feasible years 1 through to years 5. So it will be a process.
Yeah.
We have started in the meantime actually doing some things, even when this was being developed. The Look Out for Your Neighbour campaign was an idea that came out from this. We did a International Day of Older People's afternoon tea celebration. We've got other things happening, so it doesn't mean to say that things won't happen, but the planning part of it will take a bit of time.
Okay, and just once it's actioned, we've got an action plan that will be reported back on how you are. You'll obviously have measures in there, or KPIs or things that you want to achieve, and that will be reported back to council on an annual basis perhaps, or?
We have put some monitoring indicators into the strategy, which we can report back on. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Brosnan?
Thank you, through the chair. I was looking through the priority areas, the 7 priority areas, and obviously they have, I think you call them lead organisations, but some of those appear like they have almost direct partnerships with other agencies. So for instance, housing, we've got Napier City Council as the lead agency, but obviously Housing New Zealand play a key role in the definition of that priority area as well. How do those relationships work? Are they part of this discussion?
Yes, through the chair. So we anticipate that basically each of those 7 areas have a lead, but also have organisations that work on that particular priority area. So we'll be looking at all of the stakeholders that can help us achieve that priority or contribute to it, and set up almost like small project teams that will implement the actions and be responsible for feeding back what's been achieved. It's very similar to the way that we manage the Safer Napier program. It means that we can work with a big range of organisations, but that they don't form the big, huge committee. So it's just about specialisation.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, I'd just like to congratulate you for the work you've done. It's been a long process. It's been very inclusive. And I know the people that I'm associated with are very proud of the role they played and look forward to moving forward on it. So, well done. So, is there a mover and a seconder for adopting the final? Oh, okay, Councillor Wright moving it, Councillor Mawson seconding it. Is there any discussion? All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. Motion's carried. Thank you.
I would like to say something. I didn't
Oh,
realise
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes, Councillor Mawson.
As it is my
Sorry.
portfolio, I thought I'd do something.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're ageing faster and living longer than ever before. The baby boomers were born not in 1946 to 1964, and they've got the potential to redefine what it means to grow old. It's predicted that this year over 65s will outnumber children, which some of the public may not know. And by 2036, almost a quarter of our population will be aged 65 and over. I just really wanted to acknowledge you, Councillor Bogue, and you, Councillor Taylor, and hopefully I can follow in your footsteps quite well after looking after this for so long. I've got a few years to catch up, and of course Natasha and Michelle, who've all worked collaboratively, and of course I'd like to thank acknowledge the steering group and the reference group who know who they are. And of course, they've done a lot of work in this space as well. So thank you very much.
Well, my apologies for
No,
not
that's
seeing
okay.
you, but if you put your hands up, then I can be sure to grab you. So the motion has been moved and seconded, and thank you for your comment. Did we say all those in favour say aye? We'll do it again. Aye. All those against say aye. Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, our fourth item is the Napier Social Monitor Report 2019, and we have Mr. Virgil Troy from... Oh, sorry, I missed one out. Thank you. Just rushing through here. Safer Napier Program. Apologies. Okay, Safer Napier Program. Again, Ms. Gregg, you're the lead officer on this one, so we'd like to hear from you or lead any discussion that we have on this matter.
Great, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So again, starting with some acknowledgements around this work. The first is our Safer Napier Strategic Group, which is 16 organisations that sit around the table to really lead and guide the work that we do on the Safer Napier program. The council really is the facilitator of the program more than anything, and pleased to be doing that. Secondly, we have 43 signatory organisations to the program, which we're very proud of, and they provide input every year to what we do. All of those agencies and organisations have a strong interest and focus on safety in our community. And thirdly, the Safe Communities Foundation of New Zealand, who give us guidance at a national level. So today the purpose of this paper is really to give you an annual update on the 12 months ending 30 June last year. and just to give you a few highlights about what we've been doing. For those of you that don't know, Safer Napier was first accredited in 2010, one of the first communities in New Zealand to be accredited, and re-accredited in 2015. Our model that we follow is an international model, and it recognises that safety is a universal concern and a responsibility for all. It's a collaborative way of working, and it encompasses community safety in all of its forms. So you would have seen in the paper that our vision is Napier as a safe and healthy city, and our 5 goal areas at the moment in our current strategic plan are injury prevention, crime prevention, road safety, community resilience, and addiction-related harm. So it really does cover safety in all its different forms. Under each of these 5 areas, we have focus areas that we look at each year as well. Safer Napier is included in the current LTP. So our summary for the year, we've been recognised by the National Foundation as having an extensive range of networks and a good range of projects under our program. The full annual report lists all the projects that fall under the umbrella of Safer Napier, and the one-pager that we included there for you was published in the community newspaper and online, so that goes out every year. It just highlights a selection of our projects and some key statistics. So one of our signature projects, as an example, is called Safest Houses. This has been going for a number of years, but recently we've built on it and rolled it out to our retirement villages, the council retirement villages, and more recently this year in our social housing villages. We get really positive evaluation findings from that project. And all of our reporting and information is available on the website, so it's a bit to trawl through, but it is all there. So just in summary, the report that we're presenting is for the 18-19 financial year. All of our planning and actions are informed by our stakeholders and the community alike, and we gather that annually through different forums, through workshops and through community days. For example, the Whānau Fun Fest that we held late last year was run under the Safer Napier umbrella, and as part of that we collected feedback from the community about what was important for them safety-wise. Lastly, just to mention, we're an award-winning program. We've won a World Health Organisation award, the only one in New Zealand to do that, and recognised nationally as well with the colleagues that work with us on the program, including Natasha for having the overall guidance. So happy to take questions.
Yes, Councillor Price.
I just, the Safest Houses program you're talking about, does it work in conjunction with neighbourhood support?
Yeah, so it does. Through the chair, we work with civil defence, neighbourhood support, kāinga order where appropriate, and fire service. Those are our main partners for that project, and police, of course, and ACC. Yep. And we do an assessment of the household with the home, the resident, about all different factors. You know, do they need smoke alarms? Are they a member of neighbourhood support? A whole range of questions, and then we have a street kind of get together with a barbecue where people get to meet each other.
Just a further question on that, is neighbourhood support, if they're not does it help organise a neighbourhood support group?
Yes, yeah, we often have, through the chair, we often have interest from people in joining a group or starting a group, and so neighbourhood support follow up on all those interested with those people.
Mayor Wise.
Thank you, through the chair. I note in the report that you have a theme each year, and I'm just leaping forward into the current year, and just interested to know what the 2020 theme is that you're currently delivering projects on.
Through the chair, are you talking in relation to the Community Safety Day, where we had a theme on whānau
Yes.
and child safety?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Usually we hold that event every 2 years,
Oh, okay.
so we'll be talking soon with our partners around what we could focus on. Yeah.
Great, that was going to be a follow-up question. So, because you do have an annual workshop, which I presume sets your program for the following year, is that coming up soon for the 2021 year?
Through the chair, yes, we're just planning that at the moment. We'll be holding that in early April. Still figuring out the details about the program, but essentially it uses the strategic plan as the basis and then determines what do we need to focus on in terms of actions for the year.
Just adding to that through the chair, one of the things that the program does allow though is a quick response to safety issues that might be occurring at the time. So we're talking about a couple of years ago now in terms of our results. We look forward to the next year through our strategic planning. But because it is very project focused as well, we're able to respond to some issues that might be occurring now with a particular project response, and we tend to do that in collaboration with our partners.
So, thank you.
Pull the microphone a bit
So
closer.
further to that, I guess we are aware at the moment, of course, that in terms of increased assaults and domestic violence, and alongside that we have increased addiction issues within our community. So is that becoming an area of focus for the projects that are being delivered?
Through the chair, so as Michelle mentioned, one of the key priority areas is addiction-related harm, and so there are a number of projects already focusing on that. However, we do have a small amount of project funding that we can target to specific projects that can be initiated by ourselves or could be community-led, and we do that throughout the year. So the answer to the question is yes, we are doing projects that are responding to both of those issues and supporting others to do the same.
Further to that, so in terms of supporting others, is that the other organisations that are part of the program in general?
Through the chair, it's not limited to the other organisations. It could be that are part of the program. It could be people who are doing work external to being part of that memorandum of commitment.
Sorry, just two final questions. I note that we are the major funder of the facilitator at the moment. Is there any opportunities for any of the other partners to actually contribute in a financial capacity?
Through the chair, very good question. It is something that we visit regularly with our partners. Unfortunately, we're dealing with generally organisations, the government agencies that are the service delivery arm of their agencies. And they don't actually have a lot of funding to provide to these more strategic responses. However, we consistently feed back to our national organisation, the Safe Communities Foundation of New Zealand, that is a key issue for us in terms of the continual delivery of the program and its ongoing sustainability. We haven't actually had an increase in our funding, either ourselves or others, probably for the last 5 years. And we have a very good coordinator who manages to still deliver the program at the same cost. I would say that probably our resources have been targeted more to the program over the last 8 years at least, where we've focused a lot of our staff resources in the delivery of the program. So there are some hidden costs as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And then the last question, I just note that we don't currently have any of our mana whenua partners as part of the group. We do have some of our Māori providers as part of the group, but none of our direct mana whenua partners. Is that something that we'd look to explore?
Yeah. Through the chair, you're correct, we do have some partners that are providers from the community, hauora providers and Te Puni Kōkiri, a couple of other small community groups, and Rupa Iwi Trust based in Maraenui. We could look at how that works probably when we come round to accreditation. These are the current signatories who have committed to the program, but there's definitely scope to relook at that and add to it.
In terms of approaching the typing areas.
Yes, through the chair. So there have been invitations in the past, I think, and various representation over the years. I think a lot of it has depended on what the key focus areas for those organisations have been, but we're more than happy to work with mana whenua to engage them within the program, either as part of the steering group or however they would like to be involved.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Through you, Madam Chair. I've got 3 points, if that's okay. So it's kind of along the same lines as the Mayor, actually. So the first thing I noted was that our rates of family harm or domestic violence continue to be significantly higher than the rest of the country. But I was really pleased to see that we've got an increased take-up in the Loves Me Not program, which is the most preventative thing that I've seen in this space. And it's awesome that we've now got 785 students that have a really clear idea of what's a healthy relationship and what's a relationship based on power and control. I know that the Sophie Elliott Foundation has been wound up in the last few months. It was my understanding that the police were going to take the IP and continue the program. Is that happening? Do you know?
Through the chair, we are aware that the foundation is winding up, but we haven't heard yet where the police are going to pick it up. We're still waiting to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, but we are talking with them about it.
Okay.
Through the chair, there are also other programs that the police run, such as Wahine Toa, which deal with similar issues as well that we're supporting.
Cool. My second one, I liked the increase of traffic safety around schools. I thought it was brilliant. I noticed that Port Ahuriri, which is in my ward, wasn't included, but we've done some awesome improvements around that area. I was also, just want to throw it out there that there's a lot of narrow streets with blind corners and no footpaths around the schools on Bluff Hill, and so it's a potential area for expansion rather than just around schools. And it's great to see that we're doing some great work in the mental health and suicide area, and I was wondering if you'd thought about men's medicine as a potential partner.
Through the chair, we've recently heard about men's medicine and have spoken with some people connected with men's medicine, so that is an option for us to look at going forward, as well as there's quite a lot of work happening in this area. We've just recently spoken with the DHB as well around how we can partner with them in terms of some of their delivery.
Cool, thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, so if there's no further comments, unfortunately, Jason, you can't, but I could see you afterwards. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. We'll have a chat after this. Thank you for coming. Would somebody like to move and second? Mayor Wise move. A seconder, please. Councillor Crown. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd actually just like to take a moment to congratulate the staff on the huge amount of work they do and the projects they deliver on a very limited budget. You know, it's a testament to you all, and I think that this program provides us with a real opportunity to focus on the safety of our community, and I know we've received a number of awards already in recognition of all the hard work being done, and I for one am very, very supportive of seeing how we can continue to build on what we're already delivering and try and attain some additional funding somehow, because I think this is something that we do need to make a priority for our community at the moment, particularly with regards to those focusing on reduction in crime and addiction, and the fact that we already have these relationships that we can continue to add to, I think is a great platform to just do more and more in this space. So thank you for what you've done so far, and I look forward to supporting you to actually build on what we've already got.
The seconder like to speak?
Yes, so I took all everything that Mayor Wise has said, but also I think it's just a fantastic example of collaborative working and partnerships with the other organisations in our community that might have a slightly different focus, but whilst we've got the ability to bring everything together and kind of bind it all, and I think it's fantastic work, so congratulations.
No right of reply or any further discussion? Okay, we'd like to put the motion then. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. Thank you very much. Right, now number 4. I wasn't never very good at maths. The Napier Social Monitor report, and I hear we have Virgil Troy, Michelle Gregg leading the discussion, but Virgil and Natasha Mackie also at the table. So thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You'll be getting sick of the sound of my voice shortly. Here with Virgil Troy from Sill Research, who conducts the survey for Council, the Social Monitor Survey. So the purpose of today really is just to provide you a summary of the 2019 report, which was done in September last year. Was it August, September?
Yes.
Yeah. So just first a little bit about the monitor. This was previously done every second year, and we re-looked at the way it was working last year and decided to move it into an annual survey so that it gives us more relevant information. It's a survey of about 450 Napier residents 18 and over, which gives us a good representative cross-section of the community. And it uses a range of methods now, the new survey, including phone interviewing, letterbox drops to encourage people to do the survey, and an online option as well. And this has really improved the representativeness of the sample. The focus of the survey now, following the review, is very much on community wellbeing. We have a set of measures that it continues to measure, but there's some new information in there as well, which we're very excited to start collecting from our community. And this survey really does give us a good baseline. It's a snapshot in time for moving forward, which we can track over time. So new question areas for this survey include information about diversity, accessibility, social connection, community wellbeing. And the other thing that the survey does as a first is gives you information by ward. So where there's a significant difference amongst or between the wards, that's noted in the report. One example of that is, for example, residents in Nelson Park and Onikawa Tamatea wards are slightly less likely to consider their community as able to cope after a major event or disaster. So that's food for thought for us, especially considering the civil defence discussion earlier. So there's a reasonable summary of the findings in the paper, and you have the full report as well. There has been a wee change with some of the measures over time. One in particular is the safety measure, because the scale that we're using now gives a more standardised approach to rating. So you'll see that there are some small changes there. We believe, though, that the measures that we've got in there now are more accurate than what we had previously. So we've developed a plan for distributing the results following the council meeting in a couple of weeks. These will be made available to our colleagues in other departments, also on our website for the public, to other relevant council departments, and to our Safer Napier network as well. And of course the monitor gives us useful information to guide our own work. So yeah, just to reiterate, it's a point in time measure at this stage. The survey includes some new and some previously existing measures. So that it gives an overall better picture from our perspective of community wellbeing. It uses a number of indicators that are used nationally. It gives you ward information, which will be helpful for yourselves, and the next monitor will be done in September this year. So happy to take questions.
Councillor Wright?
And I love the report, and I love the new questions, and I love the fact that we are being flexible around and responding to what is happening in the community. But in that sense, it is a snapshot, and just in particular with Taradale, since this report was done, that has experienced an increased level of graffiti, vandalism, youth disorder, and a high gang presence, and a particularly nasty incident. So I would suggest that that information is already out of date, and I know that we're doing another one in September, but Natasha, is there another way or another mechanism that we will have before then to register what people may be feeling about safety in Taradale at the moment?
Yes, through the chair. So we do have the ability to drill down and create special questions through our regular quarterly surveys that Sill Research also conduct. And I think it is timely for us to think about how we could ascertain how people are feeling in Taradale, in particular after the recent events. We're also working with police in Taradale to support the suburb where we can around increasing perceptions of safety. and particularly the retailers. So we're interested in meeting with the retailers where this incident happened, and the other incidents that you're talking about. So a couple of things that we are able to do, and I think it's relates back to what we were talking about with the Safer Napier program, is to provide responses when things like this occur. So the youth behaviour that we saw late last year, we were able to redirect some of our youth development projects into Taradale specifically, and held pop-up events there over just in the lead up to Christmas, when there was a bit of a lull in things to do for young people in Taradale. So we are able to respond in that way. I do think that it would be prudent for us to talk with Sil about doing some surveying through our quarterly survey to see where people are at the moment in Taradale. Therefore, we'd be able to respond with some support.
Yes, and I do support you talking to the retailers, because I know that they've been quite affected by particularly the vandalism and graffiti and burglaries and things, so I think it's very much.
Councillor Price, could you pull your mic a bit closer? Yeah,
Courage. Just a question, you've talked about surveying in Taradale for what's taken place. Are you going to consider putting the feelers a little bit further out in the city? We're a small city, and I think the effects of Taradale had an effect on the whole city, and it'd be good to get some feedback. I mean, I've had people talk to me about that walking Park Island, and their views of walking there have changed. So spreading it a little bit further.
Through the chair, yes, I think that's a good approach, and there have been other incidences throughout the city. We know that there's been an increase in criminal activity, so while we can drill down to Taradale, it would be useful for us to find out how people are feeling throughout the city, so we'll work with Sil on achieving that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Mayor Wise.
Thank you, through the chair. Just do we share any of this information with other organisations that would, find it useful and relevant for them? For example, around the mental health percentages and statistics, and we share that with other agencies.
Through the chair, yes, we have a distribution plan, and that includes key agencies such as the DHB. It'll go to all of our Safer Napier partners as well. So yeah, it's quite a wide distribution, higher order. So yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. It's sort of related to the Mayor's question, but I noticed in the health and wellbeing that our residents report good levels of moderate to intensity activity, an average of 7.7 hours per week, higher than the World Health. First question is, has that increased since our previous survey? Because we heard not too long ago that Napier was one of the laziest cities in New Zealand. And I'm just interested to see if there has been a significant increase, or the survey methods are different.
Through the chair, that's a good question. This was a new question for this monitor, but it is one we will track over time. Important to note, however, that it is self-reported levels of activity. People often overestimate what they have actually done, but yeah, it's an indication.
Self-reported as well.
Yes, yeah.
Just to add to that through the chair, you might be referring to a Sport New Zealand survey that I'm not too sure what the comparative methodology is, so it's hard for us to relate the two, but we should see a good comparison going forward as we do these annually.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? I just wondered, I don't know quite who to ask this of, but were there any surprises? Were there anything that jumped out as being not what you'd expected, apart from the fact that, we exercise a lot more than we thought?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one major point of interest was around emergency preparedness. We saw some supplementary data from the Regional Council who survey residents, and it was interesting to see that for a number of measures there, there have been minimal changes in preparedness since 2017 for many of the measures. And it's interesting to see how few people are organised in terms of having enough water for 3 days. It's very low. And there's been minimal change despite the increased discussions about being ready for something which is probably more imminent than we thought, 3 years ago. So that's definitely something to continue looking at and working with people on, and with our colleagues at Civil Defence.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Oh, yes, Councillor Tapine.
Kia ora koutou. Fantastic work, by the way, for the last 3 items. This is not so much a question related to the reports that you've provided, but an extension on Councillor Wright's concern around drilling down on the concerns of our community. Just wanting to check, when we had attended and supported Minister Stuart Nash's police update in the Taradale area, as you roll out forward, there were some comments. I just want to ask whether they reached your table from some areas of interest, and that was from particularly our deaf community that attended the meeting at the time. Not all of them could make it into the building. So, first of all, did they manage to get that concern to you and an update sent back to them? And will have their networks been considered with regards to how your information will be flowing out going forward?
Through the Chair, that's a good question. I haven't had anything further through from the deaf community, but I can follow that up with Deaf Aotearoa and the Deaf Club. We've got good, strong connections with both those organisations. Part of the disability strategy is around how we better engage with the deaf community, because one of the major pieces of feedback we received through the consultation of that strategy was the feeling of being left out. And largely that's around the communication methods that we all use that do exclude deaf. I think you will have noticed that we have improved just the council consultation in including making sure we've got communicators, etc., so there is participation. We certainly noticed that they were unaware of a lot of what council did when we were talking with them through that process. So yes, that will be a part of the implementation of the disability strategy, but I'll definitely follow up around that particular meeting.
Any other questions or comments? If there are none, thank you very much. Did you want to say anything, Mr. Troy?
I think it's all been said.
Oh, well done. Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder for that the People and Places Committee receives the Napier Social Monitor Report 2019. Councillor Wright and Councillor Crystal. Any discussion? Yes.
There is a saying that information and knowledge are power, and I think these reports are fantastic because they give us absolutely timely, robust information and a snapshot of our community that we then can respond to as a council and make better policy decisions for the people of Napier. So thank you very much for the work that you do. It informs us and it makes us give a better result for our community, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Seconder, would you like to speak, Councillor Crystal? Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those against say no. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is number 5, the lease of reserve, the Hawke's Bay Volunteer Coast Guard Charitable Trust. And I was wondering if Mr. Faulkner, if you could come forward and talk to this or answer questions, whatever you're comfortable with.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hopefully this is a pretty straightforward item and pretty self-explanatory. All we're seeking approval is to renew the lease with the Hawke's Bay Coast Guard, which is situated on Miani Quay on the west shore side of the inner harbour. Totally appropriate that they're positioned there. They can't really go anywhere else, and totally appropriate use of the local purpose maritime reserve. And we're just taking the opportunity to align the lease with our other standard leases of reserves. So we're taking that opportunity. So, yeah, take any questions?
Any questions or comments, concerns?
Happy to move it.
Hearing none, is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor Taylor, Councillor Tapine, would you like to speak to that mover, seconder? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Thank you, well done. Now we move to the two items of minor matters not on the agenda. Councillor Brosnan? Was it you?
No,
Or was it?
Napier Wise.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Wise. Yep.
A brief update on the Te Pihinga.
Oh.
Right. Through the chair. So the Te Pihinga project, as many of you will be aware, we made an application to the Provincial Growth Fund last year to see whether we could get some support for the entire project. We haven't actually had an official response yet. So we are looking at other avenues for funding at this stage and focusing primarily on the delivery of the community facility. Where we're up to with that is that we've been working quite closely with the community around the need that we'd be looking to address through that facility, what kind of programs the community are interested in having at such a facility and how they'd like to use it, and therefore looking at how that facility needs to be designed. So we're currently working on a concept design which we're looking to take back out to the community in March, April, and that will also that will then get some feedback from and then come up with a final concept design for costing, and then we're in the position that we'll be able to seek alternative funding from other sources such as lotteries, Eastern Central Community Trust and a whole range of funding providers. I will prepare some information for councillors to bring you all up to speed with the whole project, because the community facility is one part of the whole project, which also involves working with Kāinga Ora on their housing developments, looking at roading changes to accommodate better connectivity. We heard from Michelle earlier about community resilience, and there's definitely some issues that we need to address, particularly in the eastern suburbs around evacuation corridors, etc. So they're all wrapped into this broader piece of work, which I will come back to you with more information about in the next month or so, when we've got that draft concept as well. Is that about
May
right?
I just ask, sorry, the splash pad, that's part of the Te Pihinga?
There's a couple of parts of the project. One is around extending the recreational space that's already in Maraenui, and we have heard from the community over the years that there's a desire for a splash pad there. So there are sorts of things that we're exploring, and we can take back out with this concept to see how those could be incorporated.
Thanks very much.
Can I ask a question? Thank you, Natasha. I'm looking forward to the update on what, where the project's got to. I think it's been a little while, so I'm not entirely sure in my own head what it includes and doesn't. One of the things around a community facility, to make it really successful, it needs sort of a key partner to run it. And is the project going to be council run in terms of delivery out of that, or would you say partner with a place like Zeal, for instance, that I know has been interested historically in setting up something in Napier?
Through the chair, that's a really good question, and what we're starting with is the idea of what the community facility might be before looking at the operating model. It is the feedback that we've received, and particularly around the needs of the community, it is looking very much like an incubation type of facility where people are able to come in a safe environment, learn new skills, or build their own capacity to then be able to participate and access what's going on in the wider community region and New Zealand and the world. So it's in those sorts of terms we need to look at who's best placed to work with us. It may be a phased approach where council may may run it initially. There's definitely some thought around who is in that facility to ensure that everyone is welcome and everyone feels like it's their place. That's a very strong piece of feedback we've had from the community, and so we need to be very cognizant of that as we develop how it will be operated. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms Mackey. The last item of general minor matters is from Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing the minor matter to be heard today. I really appreciate that. It's a great opportunity to update Council and to reassure our public that there is work being done in this space. So based on the resolution of Council last year, that would have been our number one priority, and an acknowledgement of the work that was shared with us at a meeting late last year from our water team, it was decided that we would set up a committee to work on a comms and engagement strategy going forward, and that the committee was going to set a very high level strategy for all waters for the ongoing communications, and that team, that committee includes people from our community development strategy department, people from our water department, our communications team, and Councillor Simpson and myself, so there's good representation across the committee. And that basically work is progressing and it's developing really well. We've got some key messages, and we're almost at that point now where we've landed on a really coordinated and consistent approach. And the aim is really to continue to inform our community and support our staff as we tackle these issues ongoing.
Thank you. Well, that brings our meeting to a close, so thank you for your participation, and I now declare this meeting closed. And could we have a 5-minute break perhaps before the commencement of the next meeting?
I'm comfortable with that.